I got up in the morning and walked into the living room. What was unusual was the fact that my brother was there, and I say unusual because most of the time he was confined to his bedroom. What wasn't unusual was the fact that he was wearing his surgical gloves. He didn't see me at first and just sat there watching TV while eating chips out of a packet with a fork. When he did see me, he bounced out of the chair like a cat that had just seen a cucumber and shrieked, "Get away from me!" I was a teenager and I knew no better, so I moved in closer to annoy him, and he shouted something about me going to a concert the night before and how many dirty people I'd rubbed up against. I was filthy, a disease-carrying walking virus, and this went on for about 2 years. Welcome to the life of a germaphobe. That story is true, a real-life event of the writer you're about to listen to. I'm ashamed to admit it, but at the time I didn't take my brother's fear of germs very seriously. Hey, I was 18, 19 years old. It bugged me that my own brother wouldn't come near me, that he had to have a separate shelf in the refrigerator, that he kept saying I was a walking virus. After I'd been to raves or concerts, that would make him very edgy. He'd virtually quarantine himself in his bedroom, sneaking out occasionally when the coast was clear to get some food. Maybe I'd gone to see a band like Pearl Jam, and oh, how his mind would worry about the dirty, grungy fans I was smashed up against on the floor. His condition, of course, was of the mind. He had a pretty extreme case. It made him untouchable, and as you'll see, that can kill a person. But first, you should know something about germophobia. There are a lot of names for it, including Mysophobia. Myso means germs, and as you know, phobia means fear. Lots of people have phobias, such as arachnophobes, people who are very scared of spiders. That's not so bad though, because a person isn't exactly rubbing up the spiders every single day of their life, unless they live in a tree popular with spiders located in the Amazon jungle. The reason why germophobia is so bad is because literally everything is a clear and present danger. Someone once said, "I see dead people." A germaphobe sees bacteria and microbes and they believe that these will kill them. This very world is a death trap. Everyone is a potential killer. This can make it almost impossible to live a normal life. You can't watch TV with your own brother. You can't use a public transportation. You can't work near other people. You eat chips with a fork, wear a mask half the time, and will only drink bottled water. And you can forget about eating the family cheese. Yet me and my brother once fell out over cheese. I'm eternally ashamed to say I hit him once with a block. My fingerprints were on it, so guilty as charged. You can't have relationships. You have to constantly wash yourself and wash things close to you. You can't sit down on toilet seats, and you have nightmares about door handles. Even if you get sick, you'd rather die than go to a hospital where there are lots of germs around being spread by sick people. You basically can't live. You're like that kid with no immune system that had to live in a bubble, except with germaphobes, the real danger is all in their minds. As I write this, people in the streets are wearing masks and constantly using hand sanitizer, and it's easy to see that some people are very anxious, some of them even depressed. Now imagine that this was your life permanently. No one really knows exactly why it happens to people, but within the mental health community, the experts think it's linked to anxiety or depression or perhaps childhood trauma. With my brother, I would guess the latter. He didn't have it easy, that's for sure. You might not know this, but some really famous people have suffered from germophobia, either with an extreme case like my brother's or with a milder case, such as they just wash their hands a lot and might not be too happy about shaking a stranger's hand. It's also been linked to obsessive-compulsive disorder, but germophobia ups the ante. They might become preoccupied with a certain object, or in my brother's case, me and all those raves and concerts I was going to. I was a walking time bomb to him, and on just seeing me, his head would feel light, his vision would become blurry, and he would basically lose his sense of reality. I drove him crazy, literally. One of the most famous people to suffer from it was the billionaire Howard Hughes. This amazing innovator who barely survived 2 plane crashes and lived an incredibly insane life with riches and fame had for a long time suffered from a severe case of obsessive-compulsive disorder. And it got so bad that the man became a total recluse. He couldn't go near anyone. An eccentric that had once made his fans woo confined himself to a room. By the time he died, he'd taken so many drugs and eaten so little that he looked like he'd spent 3 years on a deserted island. Hughes was 6'4", but when he died, he weighed just 90 pounds. His hair was long, he had a long beard, his fingernails and toenails hadn't been cut in months, perhaps years. They'd actually had to use fingerprints to identify him since he looked nothing like his former self. That's how bad things can get for a germaphobe. Later, a psychologist said about Hughes, he didn't believe germs could come from him, just from the outside. He was convinced that he was going to be contaminated from the outside. The comedian Howie Mandel has talked about his germophobia, although he doesn't seem to be an extreme case. He wrote a book called Here's the Deal, Don't Touch Me, and he has said that he obsesses about germs everywhere, ready to attack him at any moment. He once said, "I'm always on the verge of death in my head." He said his hands were like petri dishes. He spent much of his life sneaking off to bathrooms to scrub those hands. He said there's one thing that scares the hell out of him. In his own words, he said, "Handrails are my enemy. I never go near a handrail." Sometimes, he said, when his fear is triggered, that's it. His day just stops. He can't go on. He has to hide away like poor Mr. Hughes and like my own brother. What's strange is that in one interview he talked about his childhood and said this, "I became a pariah. I think the thrust of any child is to try to fit in and be part of it." I say that's strange because a couple of minutes ago I called my brother and he used that same word, pariah, while we were talking about his germophobia. I should explain to you that my brother became my sister as we grew up. That's because she is transgender, something we both knew before we'd even heard of that word. Put it this way, when we played doctors and nurses when we were kids, my brother was always the nurse, and I was always the patient. Not sure that bodes well for me. Our blue-collar small town was not exactly trans-friendly. In fact, there was no other transsexual people in our town. Don't forget, this was back in the day, days when local dullards would go about beating on people or harassing people that just weren't like them. Every day my brother was harassed, sometimes punched, most of the time laughed at. This bothered me a lot, but still his germophobia I found it hard to live with. I didn't much like being his virus. So I was talking on the WhatsApp with my sis and she said that back in those days she felt like a social pariah. She believes that childhood might be a reason for the germophobia, but she also believes that being a germaphobe gave her some control in a world where she felt she had none. A world in which she was constantly bullied, laughed at, a world in which she was an outcast. So she created her own world, a safe world, but that meant that she had to stay away from others, from contamination. It was moving out of that small-minded town and getting away from the family home, I guess that included me, that helped her to deal with the germophobia. She gained control, but at the same time, her sense of really needing control dissipated. The germophobia went and it never came back. Fortunately, I'm no longer a problem and she's happy to share food with me. We met last year to see our father on his exotic island and we shared drinks from the same glass. In fact, the very last time we saw each other, we embraced at an airport, cheek to cheek, germ to germ, and said goodbye. I walked away holding back tears. Now you really have to watch this video, the disease that makes people dance until you die. Or watch this.